In this video, we're going to cover another type of loop, and this loop is called a for loop. And we'd use a for loop when we know how many times we want to go and execute something. So for example, if we had, a list of names and we knew that list of names was going to be a certain length, maybe there was 5 names or maybe there was 10 names in that list, then we could use a for loop. If we didn't know the quantity or the size, we could use a while loop. But in most cases, you can actually use both a while loop or a for loop and you get the exact same output. I'm going to run through an example using a for loop here. So to start off with, we're going to go and define our for loop by using the keyword for, and then we're going to say n. Now n can be anything. We could call this z if we wanted to, and we're actually going to rename it to z or some other letter in the future, but just for now we're going to use n to keep it simple. And I'm going to say in range, and range just means from 0 to whatever number we're going to put in. So I'm going to say 5, so this would be in the range from 0 to 5. So when we go and print out this, we'll get the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. We'll not actually see 5 because it's kind of up to 5 but not including 5. And now after our for loop, like our other loop, we're going to use a colon, and then we're going to just print out n, because n is what we've defined this as here. So I'm going to want to print n, and I'm going to run this. We're going to see our output is, as I said, we start off with the number 0. Usually when you start counting, we start from the number 1. But when we're dealing with computers and most computing programming languages, we start off by counting at 0. So that's exactly what's happening here in Python as well. So we start off at 0, then we go to 1, then we go to 2, then we go to 3, and then we go to 4. And just to keep in mind, 5 is not included. So if I change this number from 5 to 10, again, we get the numbers 0 to 9 printed out, but it doesn't print out 10. So it does print out 10 numbers, but 10 is not included itself. Now, I said before, this n could be anything. So I just call this n because n is short for number, but we could go and name this whatever we want. So we could say that this is z. And now again, we're going to need to change the print statement as well, because if we try and print out n is not going to be recognized because we've renamed it. So I'm going to change it with the letter z, and I'm going to run this, and you'll see we get the exact same output. And it doesn't just have to be a letter, like we could have something like Ryan, although Ryan makes absolutely no sense for this example, but just to show you that it can be any name whatsoever and it doesn't have to make sense. But it's usually a good idea to call it something that you would be able to recognize when you're looking at the code. So as you can see, Ryan displays out the exact same output, but you would want to name it something a little bit more readable, like maybe n short for number, or maybe you want to call it num, or maybe you even want to use the full name number if you wish. But that's the range. Now there's another couple of things we can do with the range keyword. So you can currently see that we start off with the number 0. But if we didn't want to start off with the number 0, if we wanted to start counting at the number 1, we would go and put whatever number we want to start with just before our number 10. So we could put in 1 and then put in a comma. And if we go and run this, now you can see that we count from 1 to 9. So we don't include the 0. If for whatever reason we wanted to start counting at a different number, so maybe we wanted to start counting at the number 3, we'd go and replace that with the number 3, and you can now see that we start counting at the number 3, and then we follow on until we get to the number 9. Now currently we're incrementing by 1 in our for loop, but if we wanted to increment by more than 1, so maybe similar to our last example, we want to increment by 2. To do this, we would just put in a comma after the 10 and whatever number we want to increment by. So we're going to increment by 2 this time. So if I go and run this, you can see that we start off counting from the number 3, and then we increment twice, so that gives us 5. Then we increment by 2 again, which gives us 7, and then finally increment by another 2, which gives us 9. And we could just put this to 3 or any other number we want, and now we can see that we get 3, 6 and 9 being displayed.